everybody, Rob Ferretti here with my 1998 Toyota Supra Turbo, which is the best car, in my opinion, that was available in the United States from the 90s. It's going to be hard to disagree with that. Now, what made this car so desirable? The fact that it was extremely moddable. Not that it was particularly awesome in stock form or stock trim, but that you could throw a bunch of horsepower at it and it would take it, it wouldn't break, it was reliable, and it was able to make 6, 7, even 800 horsepower back then was astronomical. When you think about cars now with 2,500 horsepower, that's what an 800 horsepower car was in the 90s. And that's why the generations fell in love with it. That's why it has such a strong value. And right now, virtually any Supra that you go out and find with 100,000 miles, 70,000 miles, 200,000 miles are still selling for more than they cost originally. And they're really tough to find in stock form, but the simple reason is because most people didn't keep them stock. It's not like a Ferrari, where when you start modifying and it's worse of a car. Stock form, these cars are worse. Like, this car is not a terrific car in stock form. So it's sort of interesting to me where collectors are saying like, oh yeah, you know what, I want a stock one. Now, I've talked about selling this. I've never actually taken the steps to sell it other than telling people in my video, if you want to buy it, I will sell it. But this car, in my opinion, is exactly what the collector is going to want to buy, because it is the epitome of top-end modification on a low-mile chassis. And that's really what you should be looking for in a collector car and or Supra or even R34, is a car that's not beat to shit, that wasn't stuck together with eBay parts or owned by a dozen 18-year-olds and they were doing whatever they can and drifting it and banging it up and slapping it back together. This is a low mileage chassis with the best of the best as far as modifications go that were available at the time. Obviously, there's probably better mods you can do to it now, but it's not something that I would ever run away from. The fact that I don't have the stock wheels anymore. The stock wheels suck. Like, anyone that buys a Supra and says, there's my stock Supra over there, that's pretty lame to me. And if I were a guy who bought a car, even if I was going to buy an RX-7, a Supra, like any of these cars, the 240s, the 300ZXs, all those cars are better with mods than they are with factory trim. The cars were purchased by these generations and loved by these generations because of their platforms, not because of the exact car as it rolled off the dealer showroom, but of what it was capable of and what it could turn into. So the fact that these cars are now turned into modded cars and they still sell for, you go get a nice modified Supra right now, 70,000 miles. Oh, 93, 94, that doesn't really matter. You're still paying $60,000 to $70,000. That's a lot of money. Even if you get one that's not perfect or needs a little bit of work, you may get it for $50,000. You're not getting, that's still over MSRP. That's still over what these cars sold for new. So to buy a car with, for all intents and purposes, you take another car, a Corvette C4 with 70,000 miles on it, which is technically a low mile car, or a 200,000 mile C4 from the 90s, what's it worth? Nothing. A fraction of what it was sold for initially. Whether it's modified or stock, doesn't matter. The cars plummeted in value. All of them did. The ones that didn't are, you're talking the Ferraris, Lamborghinis, they went up in value, but not to the extent of these cars, where you get a nice, clean, low-mile car. I've seen a bunch of them now, even stock form, selling for, or at least listing for $100,000 to $125,000 for a sub 30,000 mile Supra. And that's 95s, 96s, 98s, 97s in varied colors. I just happened, and I'm not tooting my own horn here, but I'm honk honk. That was a little toot of my own horn. This is a 98 black 6-speed turbo. And the only thing that would, I think, make it more desirable in the world of like Supra buyers is if it was a hard top and not a target top. I personally would buy a target top because I like taking the top off. But these tops are a little bit of a pain in the ass to take off. But they're really fun and they're really nice to drive around with the top off, like in Fast and the Furious. Remember that? Remember that? Poof, punch the top. That happened. But that doesn't really happen in real life, because in real life you have to take a little Allen wrench and unscrew the top, and he didn't do that in that movie. It's not like, here, get this Allen wrench, and 60 seconds later they're popping the top. No. So where is a parallel here? Another, and probably the second best car that was produced in the 90s is the Skyline. And the Skyline was available in Europe, not available over here. It was available pretty much everywhere but here. It was available in Canada, it was available in Japan, it was available in the UK. So the prices aren't as crazy in those locations, but in the US, it's like a forbidden fruit. And you go buy one with 70,000 miles, people are like, oh shit, I'll pay 100 grand for that. There are people paying for not so nice R34s what they wouldn't be willing to pay for a nice Supra, which is really weird to me, because I think the Supra is, and it's probably just because it wasn't available over here and they think they're being trendy or something, but the Supra and the R34 should pretty much be on par, selling at the same price. And we're talking same mileage, same price, same everything. But people are jumping after modified Skylines. People are lining up for them, which is really weird to me, because nobody's like, ah, you know what, that's got mods, I don't want to touch it. I don't really see very many stock Skylines running around there anyway. So that could be the reason, but there's also not a lot of stock Supras. So if you're going to pick the best car of the 90s, the best two cars of the 90s, I would say they're both Japanese, and that's reflective now in the market where both of them are selling for sort of astronomical rates given what they initially cost. And I still think they're going to go up in value. I wouldn't be surprised to see this car $150,000 to $250,000 one day if it's not really driven. I'm going to sell this and get one to drive. Even if I sell this for 100 now, I'm happy. I just want to get one that I can put miles on. I keep saying it and I just haven't committed to it yet. When I finish my truck and have my ramp truck and I can tow it up to one, or up or down to one of the auctions, I'll run it either through Barrett Jackson, RM, one of these auctions, maybe even at Pebble Beach next year. But I'm curious to see what happens. I'm curious to document that experience, what it's like to sell a car through an auction like that. This car itself, to me, probably one of the finest examples of Supras out there. For everybody that's like, oh, geez, dude, you're expecting way too much money asking 100 grand. This car's not going down in value. This car is never going to go down in value. There are so few of them with this sort of mileage on it and no accidents. And I'm a guy, I don't even want there to be paintwork on the car. So there's this little dent down here from when Roger had it in his driveway and his little nephew fell on it with a bike and it dented it. I don't want to have paintwork on the car. There's a little nick on the top roof here. And this car, all original paint, adult owned, not chopped up. Not everything that I've done is reversible. Why somebody would reverse it, I don't know, because these cars are as desirable, if not more desirable, or they should be at least, with modifications, because a stock Supra sort of sucks. Like, you go drive a stock Supra and you're like, here you go, I got a 5,000 mile 1997, 1998 six-speed Supra. You're going to drive it and you'll be like, it's not that great. The brakes aren't that great. The acceleration isn't that great. And the wheels look terrible. So you're not going to be too thrilled with it. It's when you get in a car like this, you're like, that's what a Supra is all about. And even worse, getting in a stock Supra versus a modified one, the thing that people love about Supras is no matter what you have in your Supra, everybody thinks it's got 1,000 horsepower. It's just, it's a given. Oh, you got a Supra? Dude, that's like 1,000 horsepower car. So, very popular car, as it should be, and it's selling at a multiplier that you're not going to see from any other car other than a Ferrari or Lamborghini, and actually better multipliers than the Ferrari or Lamborghini. The only car at all from the 90s that I think is selling at a multiplier better would be the McLaren F1. So, that's not bad company to be in. F40, McLaren F1, Supra, GTR. Best cars from the 90s, guys. Keep an eye on them. There's not a lot of them out there, especially unmolested, clean ones. I'm happy I own it, but I'm happier to sell it and get something else because I really like driving these. I like driving Roger's. He had 60,000 miles on it. He didn't really care. Take it out. And that was a super fun car to drive. I definitely put the brakes. I do the suspension. I do the engine. And I just go out and enjoy the shit out of it. So there are my thoughts on the Skyline versus the Supra versus the best car of the 90s. Title it whatever you want. Thank you for watching. Leave your thoughts in the description below. If you disagree with anything I said, you're allowed to disagree as long as you're going to make a valid point. If you don't make a valid point and you just want to scream, I guess that's the internet, isn't it? Catch you next time.